All right, good morning, everyone. If you are here, let me know in the chat that you can hear what I'm saying, what I'm doing, and what I'm thinking. And thanks for coming to talk about the wonderful, wonderful art of being focused and concentrated. And there's wonderful, wonderful tools for being able to do that. So great to have you here. Hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and generally be active. That's what makes these live streams so interesting to do, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this morning. And just a special thanks to Julie for this cup again. Always be yourself, unless you could be Batman, and then of course be Batman. I think that's a very memorable thing to to remember, because you do want to be yourself. You're the only self that you can be, but we all have masks, and some of the things that we're missing in the world are the masks that are actually useful. So there's the phony masks, and then there are the masks that make us much more better people, and we can put them on. But the phony masks destroy us, and the improving masks make us better people. So we want to think about the variety of masks that are out there, and really, really be on a line with the masks that really help us improve. And so we are going to talk today about some of these roles that we can play. One of these Batman masks that we can put in, or one of our Batman toolbox things that we can take from our utility belt and create focus and concentration on demand. But Cindy's here from Canberra. Thanks for saying hello, Cindy. Really appreciate that. I assume everybody can hear me. We're trying a new setup here, so I'm not entirely sure how it's working, but let me know if you can hear me. I guess Cindy can. Thanks for saying hello, and really appreciate that. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, and any questions that you have while we're doing this live, roll them up, and let's talk about memory. Let's talk about focus. Let's talk about concentration. One of the best things to do is, if there's a problem with focus and concentration, is just to name it and start to identify what it is, so we can actually talk about it in specific terms instead of generalities and find solutions. I've certainly done a lot of experimentation and exploration, but always from being very specific about whatever it is that I may have been having an issue with. So don't worry about anybody else's problems, but worry about the specific problems that one has, in order to make sure that you're actually getting the specific results that are actually going to help. So that's really, really important. And one of the things that has been very useful for me is a lot of reading. So I'd like to share with you some of the books that I have gotten a lot of help from in terms of focus and concentration, particularly for memory. And you may notice here I have the latest podcast up, How to Improve Focus and Concentration Using 3 Memory Boosting Habits. And you'll want to supplement this episode with that, and you can certainly check the link out below in the description below. But some of the books, of course, are not just on the podcast episode, but here they're real, and that's the important point: is that you are really taking action with real material and actually using that material in order to get a better sense of things. So that's a really important point. If you want to think of in terms of the Batman mask that you can put on so that you can be a better version of yourself, you're going to need to actually do some self-study. It's the only way I ever got anywhere. And do it from the basis of yourself, and invest in yourself, invest time in improving your focus and concentration, because that's the only way that your concentration and focus will get improved. So that's just a general important point to keep in mind. Maybe it's a bit of an obvious one, but sometimes common sense isn't so common. So it's worth pointing that out. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up, and let me know in the chat where you are in the world, and that everything is working for you in terms of the sound and the picture and all that stuff. And let's go. So one of the first points that I think is really, well, I've sort of referenced it already, but it is, knowing that you want to put on your own problem in words, and then start to question things. So one of the things I'm talking about here in this episode is, and on this blog post, is the power of skepticism for improving your focus and concentration. And starting with yourself, starting with you. Who are you? What is your problem? Name the problem, give it some dimension. When did it start? What might be influencing it? What might be the solution? But be skeptical. Be skeptical that it even is a problem. You know, a lot of people in the memory world, they come to me and they tell me these problems they're having, and I'm just like, hold on. Is that really a problem? You know, they talk about how they can't clean their memory palaces properly, for example, and they're remembering stuff from yesterday and they can't reuse the memory palace. And every time I'm just like, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. You just don't have an outcome. You don't have milestones towards that outcome, but having a difficult time reusing a memory palace because the information is sticking too well, not a problem. Not a problem. But when it comes to the focus and the concentration, one of the issues there is that their focus is misapplied. So you got to be skeptical of your own problem, right? Because they're focusing on it being an issue, and it's not an issue, it's the solution. So then you just got to figure out, what are you going to do now that you realize that you don't have that problem. Steve's here from Scotland, says the video and sound's working well. Thank you, Steve, for letting me know. And as always, if you're joining us, let me know in the world where you're coming from. Let me know what you think about this new setup that we're trying here today. Always experimenting, always trying to make things better, cooler, more fun, engaging. But if it's not working, obviously I want to know. Don't necessarily believe in the wisdom of the crowds either, but you are not exactly a crowd, and you are all very wise. So anyway, that's the one thing that I wanted to start off with, is the foundational point that you've got to be skeptical of your own assumptions about your focus, about your problems that you may have, because maybe they're not problems if you put some skepticism into them. And so in terms of that, we'll talk a little bit later about how that is going to work and help you and so forth. But in terms of real focus and concentration, one of the biggest things that has helped me most recently is a book called Rest by Alex Soo-Jung Kim Pang. And it was really fun to tweet out this new podcast and post, and he retweeted it. So thanks for that, Alex. That's really great. And well, what was it about this book that was so impactful for me? Here it is here. I read it, just very couldn't get enough of it. It was one of those things where, you know, don't you love those books where you can't stop reading? You pick it up and then you read it all the way to the end, and then you're almost beginning to read it again. This is one of those reads for me. It's very well written, but it doesn't skimp on the data. It doesn't skimp on the rich scientific detail. And so I highly, highly recommend it. And it's cool because there's a lot of counterintuitive elements in it. So some of those counterintuitive elements, I recognized in my own experience. I recognized it in things that I've understood from other authors in the world. I pay a lot of attention to other authors because I write so much myself. And the focus and concentration tips in this book are just really, really powerful and reflected in things I sort of already knew. And so I started to do them again in a new way and mix them with digital fasting and so forth. And around that time, I was reading A World Without Time, which is a book about Gödel and Einstein. And, you know, it just kind of clicks in the head. This book is saying that, hair. The troubles of having being a long-haired person never end. But A World Without Time is really interesting because it talks a lot about Einstein and Gödel walking together and how that gave them these ideas and how they solved problems that way. Oh, Bernie's here. Hello, Bernie. Thanks for saying hello. And good to see you. Thanks for confirming that everything is working. Really having a lot of fun with this new setup, experimenting, seeing what we can do to make things cooler. Anyway, basically, one of the things to understand is that people who succeed tend to take a lot more rest than you would think. So one of my favorite examples in rest is Charles Dickens. I mean, the guy wrote tons and tons of stuff. Yet how is that possible to read so much or to write so much? And a lot of it comes down to walking. But we've sort of, in many parts of the world, we've lost this. And I see it here where I'm living now in Brisbane, where it's not really a walking friendly area in many parts. In other parts it is, but I walk into what they call the CBD, Central Business District, and it's just cars, and it's not even particularly biking friendly. But yeah, it's interesting to do that walking and to see how the city is constructed in some ways to not really give you focus or concentration while you're walking because it's so noisy. You've got to pay attention to so many opportunities to be destroyed by traffic. And so it's interesting. But nonetheless, I started walking a lot more, leaving the digital devices at home. Um, it freaks my wife out when I read while I walk, but I've always done that, and I'll show you a picture of that in a second. But by the way, a lot of people, they've been leaving super chats on these live things, and I really, really appreciate that. But just so you know, if you want to get a free video of how to use a memory palace in a very, very unique way, then consider doing what Barry did here and use the link that's in the description below and sometimes appearing on the screen, magneticmarymethod.com/swag. Let me see you with something from the Magnetic Mary Method store, and we'll send you that video at magneticmarymethod.com/swag. And you don't have to drink out of your Magnetic Mary Method cup. I use it to store pens and colors for mind mapping. And incidentally, coming up, we're doing a big profile on the new Tony Buzan Mind Map Mastery book, which is absolutely excellent. But in any case, if you want to store your colors for mind mapping, why not in a fresh, fancy Magnetic Mary Method cup, which allows me to send you a password to a special page with a tutorial on using some stuff you already have in some very accelerated ways for your memory palace work. So thanks to Barry for that great picture. Really appreciate it. So back to rest and walking around and concentrating and so forth. It really, really is good to go and spend time with nothing other than the express purpose of walking, just somewhere, anywhere, and no MP3, no anything. Sometimes I do read while I walk, but I tend to just carry the book a lot of the time and just walk and think and let the mind wander. Let the mind wander. And that's one of the things that Peng talks a lot about in rest and gives the evidence for mind wandering. And if you go and you read this full post, which I hope that you'll do, you'll see that I talk about some of the points that are brought out in the book about dopamine being created in the brain when you're disengaged. I think everybody knows the hot shower phenomenon and so forth. And you can read more from Peng and check out his blog. There's a link there for you. But in terms of walking around and thinking and stuff like that, I've done this a lot. And there's that image I was mentioning where I just walk and read. And I love to walk and read. And it's been something that I first did when I read the Republic by Plato, and it's just because I didn't have time. There was no way that I was going to be able to cover all of the reading at university that year because I had 3 jobs and I didn't even really have the budget to take the bus nearly as much as I would have liked to. So I had to I had to walk while I was reading and read while I was walking and to get it done. But there was something really interesting about it, and it seemed that maybe because the muscles are moving and there's more oxygen in the brain, I seemed to think better about things, to take time for thinking more, and to make more connections, which instantly and automatically on autopilot makes for remembering things better. So there's something about also norepinephrine, which is a chemical stored or created in the brain when you're in novel situations. And when you're walking and reading, you're always in a novel situation at some level. You're always coming to a intersection, and that intersection is going to be novel in some way because there's different cars there. There's a different the traffic patterns are playing out in a different way. Now, I don't know that this is producing enough norepinephrine in the brain to really make a difference, but it's something to think about. And we certainly know the airport effect in memory, which is a lot of people, they really remember arriving in new countries that they're visiting to well, which is part of the primacy effect, and they remember the first parts of the vacation, and some of that seems to have to do with the production of norepinephrine in the brain. So let me know if you know any science around that. And speaking of science, I want to give a shout out to my friend Ben Fischel, who texted me a web page here that I want to share with you. And it's got an article there called Method of Loki as a Mnemonic Device to Facilitate Access to Self-Affirming Personal Memories for Individuals with Depression. Whoa, what a mouthful. But thank you, Ben, for sending that to me. I haven't had a chance to look through it, but it says here in the abstract, depression impairs the ability to retrieve positive, self-affirming autobiographical memories. To counteract this difficulty, we trained individuals with depression, either in episode or remission, to construct an accessible mental repository for a pre-selected set of positive, self-affirming memories using an ancient mnemonic technique, the method of Loki, MOL. Participants in a comparison condition underwent a similar training protocol where they chunked the memories into meaningful sets and rehearsed them. Both protocols enhanced memory recollection to near ceiling levels after 1 week of training. I have to read the whole thing to see what they mean by ceiling levels, but I guess it means the top amount that one would be expected to hold at a particular time. However, on a surprise follow-up recall test a further week later, recollection was maintained only in the method of Loki condition relative to a significant decrease in memories recalled in the rehearsal group. There were no significant performance differences between those currently in episode and those in remission. The results support use of the MOL as a tool to facilitate access to self-affirming memories in those with depression. So what I found very interesting about this is, as many people know, when I was in graduate school, I had this very, very bad depression, and I discovered memory techniques then. And of course, you use elements of your life in memory technique work, and it really did help a lot, make me feel better. The depression didn't go away, but it was an interesting way of thinking differently about life. And there were other things, but the point here is that I was focusing and concentrating on the existing data about my life very differently. So there are many things I could focus on and concentrate on that were absolute rubbish and intolerable to live through, and that would make you feel worse, right? You just expect to feel worse. But when you start to use memory techniques and you're using memory palaces strategically, you're creating magnetic imagery that connects with amazing things, fun things, exciting things, and you're using your focus and concentration, of course your focus and concentration is going to improve because you're exercising it, but your mood could be expected to do so as well. That was certainly the case for me, which I found very good because I was depressed in a suicidal sense, and just my life turned around in many, many ways ever since. And, life has peaks and valleys, and when things go down, I always come back to memory, and it helps me so much. So great share, Ben. Thanks so much for that. Really appreciate it. And, you may need to request full text. We might have to request it ourselves, but I have some university access, so we can get it one way or the other and report on it further. Let me know in the chat if you're interested in more memory science research like this. I know that all of that words that we just read there can seem like a lot and be difficult to penetrate what exactly they mean. So if you'd be interested in hearing it more in human language, I have a PhD, so I can at least hit the ground running with some of that stuff. Not necessarily perfect, because gobbledygook is gobbledygook no matter how many degrees you've got, but we can unpack some of this fairly well, I think. And if you haven't heard my interview with Christine Till about brain exercise and the truth about some of the brain apps out there, then you want to check that out, because we talk about why some of the scientific language is so difficult. So let me know in the chat if you're interested in more about brain science, and if you aren't, then I'll take your silence as a resounding yes. No, we're not. Or resounding no, we don't care about brain science, and we won't do it. but I think it's one of the ways to unpack the truth about memory, and I may talk about it anyway, even if you don't care, because it's so empowering and it unlocks ideas when you understand what kinds of tests that they're doing, what kind of tests you can then do with yourself. Because ultimately, as I said at the beginning of this live stream, it's all about you taking yourself and using yourself as the foundation and not generalizing. Understanding generalities is great, but you ultimately have to see you in the mix. So let's check with the chat here. Dylan is from Waterloo, Ontario. All right, near home territory for me. Currently working on memorizing my major system PAO in Memory Palace rooms based on movie scenes. Rooms based on movies are easier to generate in quantity. So far, so good. Interesting. Yeah, so movies are definitely a path, especially Batman movies. Batman, there's lots of them. That's great, Dylan, to hear and keep going with that. Um, Great. So, the PAO is one of the most powerful things that you'll ever come up with. Just keep on going with it. When you have it 00 to 99 complete, it's such a triumph. It's useful every single day, and I think you're really going to enjoy the results of that. So, getting back to what we were talking about, one of the things that has really helped me a lot is removing distractions from reading and reading real books. So, as I talk about here, I had a love-hate relationship with Kindle. I just stacked my Kindle device with so many things. I read many, many books on Kindle. Loved it, actually. Not complaining about it, but there was a certain point where it just saturated, got old, didn't really like it anymore, wasn't remembering stuff anymore. And then I began to question, well, how much of it was I really remembering without compared to other books? Did some personal N=1 split tests around that, did some of the research around it, and started to realize certain facts about it, and the distractions, and the fact that a Kindle app is not, it's not just that it's not a book and that the screen is not paper and there are all these memory advantages to reading from paper that we don't get from screens. There's more to it than that. The fact is that the Kindle app is a store. It is a store, not a book. Okay, so it's like optimized to get you to buy more things. It's optimized to actually interrupt the reading experience, especially when you're reading scientific books and books that refer to other books. You have that same kind of browser interruptibility, twitchiness, where you're just like, oh, gotta go and look at that, gotta go and look at that. And so it disrupts, USSR. And USSR is not the former Soviet Union. It's uninterrupted, silent, sustained reading. And so these apps are just not those things. So I returned to going to libraries and reading a lot in libraries, and using bibliomancy, which is a process that is not speed reading at all, can read through a lot very, very quickly, and then use a particular process there to cull the information that one wants and then just memorize all that stuff and make connections deep in the brain and in the memory very, very quickly from a variety of literature. But it is done at the expense of removing yourself from the digital material, which is not an expense at all, really. Anyway, I was talking with Lynn Kelly recently. We did a call. We recorded it for a certain project that's coming up, and really delighted about that. And she was talking about this as well. I call it the rhizomatic effect, and she was she's going to do a TED talk about this, about knowledge and what knowledge really means compared to memory. And it's really, really important to understand that just being able to remember stuff isn't necessarily the path to knowledge, but if you don't remember stuff, you're not getting to knowledge. So focus and concentration. One of the best things I can really give a tip for is just, if you're having a hard time reading, get a book and just take it to a place where you're not going to have anything. And I often go around, it frustrates my wife a little bit, but I just say, I'm not bringing the phone with me. If you need me, send a pigeon or whatever, but I'll be back at 5, don't worry. I'll be back. If I'm not back by 9, then something went wrong. Well, not 9, but in any case. But then nothing interrupts the reading, and you don't feel that twitchy need to go and look at this, look up that, and it would be interesting, because that leads to email, that leads to checking out what's on the Twitters and the YouTubes and the Facebooks and all that stuff. And it's just, it's not how knowledge is built. It's not how the brain begins to create a bigger picture. And there is a place for taking breaks, for taking pauses, for rejuvenating yourself, for refreshing yourself. But in my experience, could have to do with my age, going and being interrupted all the time while reading is not the path to remembering what's in the books. It's not the path to even understanding what's in the books. It breaks focus, it breaks concentration. And so, how do you restore it? Well, you remove yourself from the problem. Because all that digital stuff and Wonderland on the line, it's not really a problem as such. It's only a problem if you're not using it with discipline and you're not framing it properly in your life. Anyhow, I got an interview here with Joanna Jast on the podcast. If you want to check it out, there's a link there. And you can get a link to this episode and this text down in the description below or wherever it is on your device. And really, really, really consider these things. Ultimately, how do you get more focus and concentration done? You just eliminate the things that are in the way of you practicing focus and concentration. If you can't eliminate the distractions, then your job is to figure out how that you can eliminate the distractions. And if you come up with excuses, like I said at the beginning, be skeptical of everything that comes. Like if you're making excuses, be skeptical of the excuses you're making. Do those things, do they need to be in your way? Are they in your way because you want them to be in your way, or are they really in your way? And then even if they are really in your way, what might be some solutions to find exceptions so that you can get them out of your way? Does all that make sense to everybody? Let me know if you have questions in the chat below. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world. Everybody's a little quiet today. What is it, summer? Here it's winter, or it's spring now, I guess. Anyway, another thing that I found really, really powerful that I'd love to share with you for helping focus and concentration is to go back and reread books that I've read before. So I do work to reread at least one book per month that I've read before. And it can be that I've read it in the recent past or in the distant past. I prefer distant past, but one in particular that I'm rereading this month is one that I read in the recent past, which is The Fire of Self-Knowledge, which is a commentary on the Atma Bodha by James Schwartz. Very, very good book, very powerful book, and one that I supplement with a lot of his audio programs and online videos and so forth. So rereading is a cool way of improving focus and concentration. And one of the reasons why that it works is that you relieve your brain a little bit. You don't have to focus and concentrate so hard because you read it before. You're like revitalizing, refreshing, coming back to the content as opposed to hitting it new, right? And your cognitive demands, well, I wouldn't say they're lower, but they're different. They're different, and you get to have the exercise of your cognitive demands differently because you're going to notice different things that you didn't notice before. I had well, I always called him uncle, but he was just the best friend of my dad, and he always talked about rereading his favorite books every 7 years because of the regeneration of the cells. And I always thought that was a cool idea, a very good idea, because it is like you're coming to it as a different person, even if you still remember it. So I've often kept that in mind. Interesting. Anyway, that's one thing, and there's a whole big episode and podcast about rereading strategy, and you can check that out at your leisure if you want. And then the next tip, we've got changing your reading habits to improve focus and concentration. We've got walking more, walking for the purpose of letting your mind wander, and then also the third point is, as I call it here, gamble your time with focusing and concentrating on zilch. And that is a reference to meditation. And meditation is, of course, one of the most powerful things you can do for your focus and your concentration and your memory. I don't know why it's such a hard sell, but I think one of the reasons is that it's just described in so many ways that are that it's just made too complicated for too many people, and the promises that are made are perhaps sometimes a little bit too woo woo, and it's hard to translate. Because enlightenment and spirituality stuff and yada yada, nothing wrong with it as such, but it can muddy the waters and get in the way of the actual scientific outcomes that you can produce if you just approach it scientifically. Um, and in any case, it's so powerful. It's so powerful to meditate, to set that time aside to practice focus and concentration by streamlining your focus on particular mental activity that creates more focus for you. So some of the meditation routines that I do, they have nothing to do with clearing your mind or silencing your mind. I find all of that, that's just not the goal. Your mind is there, and it's one of the things that's talked about by James Schwartz in The Fire of Self-Knowledge, and he talks about it a lot. And be cautious of what you're doing with meditation. Alan Watts used to talk about this as well. He said, "You want to have no mind? That rock over there. This microphone has no mind. We have enough things in the world that have no mind. You want to have a particular kind of mind. You want to have the kind of mind that is sharp and focused on the goals and outcomes that you have for you, and that performs when you want it to perform, regardless of what's going on in the world." And you don't want to turn meditation into an addiction, into something that you need, where you're walking around saying, "Oh, well, I'm not feeling that great today because I didn't get to do, my meditation." That's not the goal. And I was very fortunate to be told that, to be warned about that when I was new and young to the game of meditation. So you want to use it for what it can do, understand what it can do for you, explore the different kinds of meditation that are available for you as an individual, and dive in and get the results that are there. But you may need to explore walking meditation, you may need to explore breathing meditations, you may need to explore laying down meditations. There's all kinds of meditations out there. Walking to me is just a beautiful meditation, um, especially when it's paired with breathing, especially when it's paired with muscle relaxation and being really aware of the body. And I like to do certain memory exercise while walking. It's really, really powerful, and it improves focus and concentration incredibly to be walking and actually reciting things from memory, testing them. Sometimes I'll have my notebook with me. I might write out from memory the stuff that I've memorized, and then I can go home and check it against the record, and that's very powerful. And it's just something that can be done in a meditative way while walking. So it doesn't have to be formal, it doesn't have to be stiff, it doesn't have to be boring. Meditation can be very, very exciting. So I highly, highly recommend that you don't work on it. You don't do it for hours and hours and hours on end, although you certainly can. But I don't think that's the point. I think there's so many misconceptions around it. 15-minute blasts maximum have always done me very, very well, and I imagine they would do for most people very well too, just to limit it to that. What are the benefits of meditation? Well, the first is much less mental chatter. I found this to be very powerful in life, to not have so much noise going on in the brain. Why is that good for focus and concentration? Well, it's very simple. If you're talking to people and you're not thinking about what you're going to say next, you're not thinking about what happened earlier in the day, you're not thinking about what's going to happen 20 years from now, and you're right there in the moment, well, you're going to remember more of what they said. You're going to be more focused on what they're saying, and then you're going to have better responses because it's going to be deeper in your mind. You're going to have better things to say in response. And generally, even if you don't have better things to say in response, you're just going to be more relaxed, more calm, more cool, more in the moment. You're going to enjoy being with that person that you're talking about, or with the book, or with the class, or with whatever it is that you're enjoying. You're not going to be caught up in endless discussion in your mind. And again, I don't think it's about being silent in the mind either. One of the things that I really like is working with some of the Ribhu Gita that I've learned from Gary Weber's book, Evolving Beyond Thought. It's You're just memorizing questions. You memorize them in Sanskrit, but it's just like, are my thoughts useful? How do my thoughts behave? Right? And as you're working with this, you come to reduce the chatter, because you'll catch yourself in the chatter, and then you'll just ask. You can ask yourself in the Sanskrit, or you can just ask yourself in English. How are my thoughts behaving right now? Are they useful? Sometimes the answer is yes, they're useful. I'm thinking about the people that I help at magneticmemorymethod.com. Other times they're absolutely useless, and I can just say, yep, those are useless. Let's go on to something else. And then actually being able to focus on reciting Sanskrit, and there's more than that, is a great way of like scrubbing the mind clean of all this stuff and being able to create a clean environment that stays clean for longer and longer periods of time. And then that catching myself lost in thought happens quicker, and am able to just return to this, hey, how are these thoughts behaving? Are they useful? The answer is different, and sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. One of the interesting things is that these thoughts, whether they're useful or not, by cleaning them out leads to something that I've experienced quite a few times now, and can almost, I would say, produce at will if I wanted, which is called persistent non-symbolic experience. And there's a whole essay about it here that I've linked to on this page, that you can check out, about persistent non-symbolic experience. And it's really interesting. It's cool. I struggled with it at first when I first started experiencing it, because it's a little bit alarming, but then it gets really cool. So check that out. Definitely, you can produce this state for yourself through meditation, but you got to think about particular kinds of meditation, because not every path to meditation is the same, or not every path to persistent non-symbolic experience is the same for all people. And Jeffrey Martin talks about the different kinds of meditation that you can do. I think you kind of want to have multiple kinds of meditation going on. I certainly do, and that, I think, is what helped me quote unquote crack the code on getting into this persistent non-symbolic experience as such. So it's to be used with caution, though, and to understand when it comes to memory and focus and concentration for memory. It's the same sort of thing where you don't want photographic memory, because that can torture you. And Jill Price certainly has a story of torture around that, which you can check out here at this post about photographic memory. But in general, all things are in the pharmacon, the great pharmacy of the world, right? What is the pharmacon? The pharmacon is the principle that the cure always contains a poison, and the poison always contains a cure. So keep that in mind. The next thing that will happen for many people, it happens for me with regular, consistent meditation, is that the world seems much more vivid and bright and incredibly present, rich, and involving and inspiring, and the smallest details get so interesting. You get lost in them, like literally swirls in carpets. They're like, wow. And you just can be part of the world at a much higher level, because it is more vivid. Check in here with the chat. Dylan says, spirit is greater than mind. Becoming spirit is enlightenment, and this makes us masters of mind, as well as connects us to the collective unconscious, so we receive divine inspiration. Great thoughts. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, there's I would just focus on that word becoming, right? Becoming. We are all becoming that which we will become, and we can be involved in that process. I don't necessarily think free will exists, but we can be involved in the process of becoming what we will become. And these processes help our focus and our concentration develop and grow towards that outcome, and the best possible outcome. So in any case, I tell a little story here about some of the awareness that came from the world being more vivid. The third thing I would say is that you just get less bothered by worldly events you cannot control. So, weird how that's formatted that way, but we can't control world events, and we tend to get really bothered by things that we cannot control. But meditation helps reduce that incredibly. And so there's this quote in The Fire of Self-Knowledge that to clean the mind, an inquirer needs to abandon gratuitous activities, dedicate essential desire-prompted activities to the field of life, and take the results as a gift. This is part of this concept of karma yoga, where you just do what you do without the expectation of an outcome. You let the outcome go, and that's a very powerful principle because a lot of us, we have really good focus and concentration. It's back to what I was saying in the beginning about people who are worried about their memory results, and they worry about cleaning memory palaces and stuff. But I say you don't have a problem. And many people, they don't have focus and concentration problems. It's just they're focusing and concentrating on the wrong things, right? And so what would that look like? Well, if you're really, really focused on the outcome, and that outcome is causing you to not be the best possible version of yourself that you could be in any given moment, then you're going to ruin the chances, or you're going to lessen the chances of getting that outcome. So like people who are forced to worry about being A students, right? Now, what the heck kind of outcome is A? It's just a worldly grade that some bitter government employee is going to put on your thing. Maybe they're not a bitter government employee, but at the end of the day, no matter who they are, they're part of a system that is largely meaningless and just situated in a particular historical context, and it's not the be all and the end all. It's not indicating anything about the career that you could have if you want to have that career. It's just a milestone. It's a trial by fire, and you must know that some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world have never got through high school. And if you don't know that, you should know that. Like, it doesn't, nobody gave them permission to do the things that they do. And it certainly didn't come from certifications. Rarely is that the case. The only sort of exception there is when people do go through all the certifications, then with great power comes great responsibility. And there's all kinds of people who have all the certifications in the world who are doing pretty shabby jobs of their profession, and they're getting away with it just because, blah, 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 la-di-da, social inattention, people just, looking for the fix, and they accept what they get from the people with all the fancy degrees and stuff like this. And I say that as someone with a fancy degree. I got a couple of them. One MA wasn't good enough. I had to go get two, right? But the whole point is I've been to many doctors who their degree is pretty useless compared to the focus and concentration that people with lesser laurels give to what they're doing in life. They're 100% attenuated and focused to it, and they don't really worry about the outcome so much as just the experience, being in the moment, taking care of that particular situation in the here and now. And they're really in the here and now. And those are the kind of people that are not focused on outcomes, but focused on the moment, letting that outcome go. There's many, many examples, but in general, as far as I understand it, that's the karma yoga principle, is you just don't worry about the outcomes of things because you can't control them anyway, right? You can give yourself the fantasy illusion that you have control, but in reality, nobody knows what's happening. So if you can just be in the moment, do what you're doing, let the outcome go, just try things. You'll be so much more free, and then you'll be focusing and concentrating on what really matters, which is the present moment. So again, if you're a student watching this and you've got exams looming, I understand what that pressure is like, but imagine the different path. There's the path of reading a book where you're worried and stressed out and pulling out your hair that every single page has to be memorized, so you get this degree or you get this grade, because if you don't get the grade, you're not getting into the next level or the graduate school, or you're not going to pass the bar or whatever. That experience of reading is so joyless. It's so lacking in focus and concentration. Whereas the person who says, you know what, I'm just going to read this book and enjoy this strange world of law or medicine or whatever the case may be. And, in the private Magnetic Mary Method group, Ben, this morning, he posted something. I think he'd be pretty cool with me sharing this with you, because I thought it was really interesting. It just comes to mind now about this. Ben wrote, "Hi, Anthony. I've been a member of the Magnetic Mary Method Mastermind group for a while now, but I never introduced myself or posted an example memory palace. Basically, my experience with this memory technique is already quite extensive, as I use them almost solely during my A levels to memorize everything from English literature quotations to historical dates and geographical facts. I joined the Magnetic Memory Method course and community because memory palaces not only helped me achieve good grades last year, but they made the whole process of revision less stressful when I was experiencing exam related anxiety. I'm off to university soon, and my goal is to become a more efficient and advanced learner before then. And yeah, well, good on you, Ben. I mean, this is one of the things is it does reduce stress. It does reduce all this stuff, and you're able to focus on what matters, which is the knowledge. It's the knowledge that matters. Why else do it? Why don't do it for stress? Don't do it for being worried all the time and having a lack of focus. That doesn't make any sense. In any case, thanks for that, Ben. And if you're not in that mastermind group in Facebook, well, then you can grab the mastermind when you join the masterclass as an option, so you can be in there. And lots of cool people in there hanging out, sharing their stuff and their memory palaces and their journey and really cool questions. And amongst the best, highest performing people are the ones who are just willing to let go of the outcome. Yes, part of your mind wants this and that to happen, but so much of the success comes from being able to let it go. And you see it in sports all the time, right? I learned this from James Livers, and then later followed up with some reading and began to notice it everywhere, which is the principle that the tennis players, when after they serve or they volley or however the words are in tennis, you they check their strings on the racket. Everybody knows these are the most expensive strings in the world, the most expensive rackets in the world. There's nothing wrong with their strings there. But what they're doing is they're helping their mind forget about the outcome, forget about what just happened, and come back to the fundamentals. The fundamentals of performance, which is a ball is coming and you have to do certain things with that ball in order to get that maximum performance in that moment. So it's really powerful to think about, and it has everything to do with every moment of your life, not just your learning journey and your memory journey and so forth. You want to focus on the outcome in that moment, but not the larger one, because it's interfering. It's interfering with the actual peak performance elements that will get you to where you're going. And I'm reading a lot about peak performance at the moment as well, and we'll be sharing some findings from that in the near future. But there's a lot to be learned from athletes without necessarily having to be athletic. In any case, we want to use meditation for focus and concentration so that we stop grumbling at the things that you cannot change, because that's so much of the problem. And I say that because I've been there, and that's something that wasted a lot of mental real estate in earlier parts of my life. And I wish I had known how to get rid of that earlier. And then, of course, another thing you can do is to really help with your brain is remove all devices from the room where you sleep. Really, really important. So we can talk about walking, we can talk about meditating, we can talk about rereading books, we can talk about all kinds of things, but there's just the fundamentals too. People are not going to get the benefits from any of that stuff if their sleep is suffering. This is just well known. So you want to take care of your sleep. And one of the big things that has helped me is learning Shavasana or Savasana, and I really highly recommend getting into that. I talk a lot about it in the book, The Ultimate Sleep Remedy. Really important for memory to have good sleep, and you want to take care of that fundamentals. I also am recommending Evolving Beyond Thought, which, just so you know, it's one thing to look at it on the screen, but it's another to see it in the real world. And this is a book that you want in your hands, on your shelf, and to revisit it often, because those chants from the Ribhu Gita are in the back, and really, really powerful to use to be critical of the things that are in your mind. In your mind, there is just stuff going on, and you can silence it, you can dampen it, you can work with it. And so highly recommend that. And so far, I've memorized lots of it, and I just, just keep coming back to it, memorizing more and more and more, and it just helps more and more and more. It's definitely a much more powerful sound-based way of improving your memory than binaural beats in memory. Although that is an interesting issue that's still outgoing. But ultimately, back to the point about skepticism, you really just want to understand that so many of your thoughts are unreal. They're unreal because they're fleeting and they're going to disappear. But what's not unreal, it's kind of ironic and it's kind of paradoxical. I'm like, yeah, forget about the outcome, but what are we doing memory techniques for? We're doing them so that we get an outcome, right? And what's real are the results. So it's kind of a paradox. How can you focus on the present moment and let go of the outcome when you still want that outcome? And it just is. It's just a puzzle you have to sort of solve for yourself, but you can do it. And if you've seen previous live streams where I've been memorizing stuff live on the show, one of the things that I just have to do is let go of the outcome, not worry about what if I make a mistake. And that's how you avoid making the mistake. It's just that way. But obviously we do want outcomes because we're spending our time on learning these techniques in order to improve. And so it's a bit of a paradox. It's a bit of a puzzle. You do want to let go of the outcome. You do want to be relaxed. And that's why we teach so many things in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass about relaxation. And that's why I'm sharing these meditation techniques with you, because if you take it too seriously, your memory won't even work nearly as well as it could without those elements. So it's important to teach them and to help people get that. But at the same time, we do want our outcomes. And so I was really grateful to receive this letter from Robert. He said, just to let you know, I'm really happy as I used my first Memory Palace to memorize 41 criteria for a teacher assessment scheme I work with, and it took me only 1.5 hours to encode. So that's 41 pieces of information in 1.5 hours. I then asked my colleagues to test me by asking me random criteria. For example, what's 5D, 4M, etc. And it was exciting. I was able to decode all the information and my colleague was really impressed. I told her about the magnetic memory method too. Anyway, I just wanted to share my excitement with you. Bye for now, from Robert. So amazing that happens. And you've got to, basically what's happening here is it's letting go of an outcome by having specific goals. So it's teacher assessment scheme, right? And not only is it teacher assessment scheme, but it's 41 criteria, okay? And so take this for anything. If you're learning a language, one of the things that people don't want to do is they want to focus more on the 2,000 words or the 20,000 words or some outrageous number than just saying, okay, what's the 41 words that are going to make a difference this week, and just sit down and do them. So focus and concentration, these memory techniques build your focus and concentration. They are the path to focus and concentration. They're an engine to focus and concentration. But one of the requirements is just to have meaningful goals and then set milestones towards achieving those goals and let go of whatever numbers you hear are involved in fluency. It's just not true. The number that matters is the one that you need to get to the goal, right? And so if you just spend a little bit of time looking into this and figuring out what that number will be for you, and then moving towards it one word at a time, one sentence at a time, you'll get there so much faster than you will if you focus on massive numbers, massive outcomes that aren't even needed. They aren't even needed. Most native speakers of their own mother tongue don't speak nearly the amount of words that new language learners hoist upon themselves. And so they're focusing on the wrong outcome. They don't have a problem with focus and concentration. They have a problem with focusing and concentrating on the wrong things. And because they're so good at focusing and concentrating on the wrong things, they destroy their ability to use that amazing power to focus and concentrate on the right things. So that's an important thing to understand. When you get that, your life can change very quickly. So 41 criteria, 1.5 hours to encode, and then everything works out. I was able to decode all the information, right? All the information. The ego thing is my colleague was really impressed. But, great, you impressed a colleague. But at the end of the day, all the information in that short of a period of time. 41 pieces of information, was it? Yeah, 41 pieces of information in 1.5 hours. This is incredible. And, congratulations, Robert. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to let me know about that outcome and let us all know, because it's very important to understand that that focus and that concentration on the particular outcome is what gets you the results. And it has a lot to do with, you changing your perception of things. So I love this quote from Oliver Sacks here. Every act of perception is to some degree an act of creation, and every act of memory is to some degree an act of imagination. And what you can do with that quote is you can understand that the things you focus on really are going to have the character of your focus. And so if you just change the way you're focusing on them, then you'll be able to change the outcomes that you're getting from it. And again, I would challenge everybody to be very skeptical. Do you really have a problem with focus and concentration? Or is it that you're using your extraordinary powers of focus and concentration on the wrong things? Really think about that and ponder it. And when you follow the suggestions that we talked about today and you go and check out this post, you'll have control of your brain. Just like this guy here, Oliver Sacks. Incidentally, Oliver Sacks is my 07. Dylan, I don't know if you have a figure yet for your 07, but 0 is S for me, and K is 7. And so he is Oliver Sacks with a sack, sacking people, which is really funny every time he comes up. And 07 comes up more often than you would think in everyday life. So, yeah. That's basically what I wanted to talk about today. If you have any questions in the last little while here, you're supposed to not tell people that you're going to be closing up soon because there'll be the mass exodus. But that's really all for today. But if you have any questions you want to post in the chat, let me know. It was really great hanging out with you all. Come and click that link down below that will take you to reading this post. One of the great things you can do for your memory is you've seen a presentation, like going to a lecture, you follow up with what the person was talking about, follow up with some of these books. The 3 books that I mentioned today were Evolving Beyond Thought, Fire of Self-Knowledge, and Rest. Good books. Highly recommend each and every one of them. In case you're wondering what I'm reading now, I'm reading Mystic by Default, which is also by James Schwartz, who authored The Fire of Self-Knowledge. And this is really great. Highly recommend it. I do believe it is available on Kindle, but I think to this day, Evolving Beyond Thought is still not available for Kindle, and I don't think it ever will be. And if you look at the blog post that Gary Weber has on his site, you'll see me urging him, even though I agree with his principles, still to make a audio version and a Kindle version, but he seems to decided not to, and I understand why. In any case, it's well worth, even if you don't want to have physical books, it's well worth getting, and then you can donate it to a library after if you don't want to carry physical objects with you throughout your life. Labib8og says, how will these techniques help the IT professional? Thanks for that question. By the way, if you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. We're going into a Q&A here. Let me know where you are in the world as well. And if you're watching the replay, hit the thumbs up anyway, and leave a comment in the discussion below. And questions, I do read these. No robots or anything are going to answer you. I will answer you. So to get to your question, Labib8og, how these techniques will help the IT professional? Well, do you have a specific issue with your focus and concentration? And what do you know right now about memory techniques? That would be one place to start. And you tell me you're from Florida. Great, Florida. Interesting place. I've never been there, but going to go meet a guy who lives in Florida in a while. So I'll ask him about it and ask him if he knows Labib8og. But so how they can help an IT professional? Well, IT professionals, as far as I understand it, they need to know a fair amount of processes, like how a router speaks to a computer and how packets of information are sent. A lot of that has to do with the names of devices. It has to do with the names of processes and so on. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that does seem to be what's involved there. So if you needed to remember a device that had a particular number, you could use the major method. Dylan here was talking about how that he's doing his PAO. So if you had a 00 to 99 PAO, anytime you see numbers, you just be like bang. Like I see 07, I see Oliver Sacks all the time. I see a 06, it's a Métis Sash. I see 08, it's Shiva, right? And there's a reason why it's these things. And there's patterns. You focus on patterns and you maximize the power of patterns. It's really, really powerful to do this. And it doesn't matter what numbers it is. You want to remember dates and so forth. You just have that image, and then once you have those images, say that it's the 07 router from, I don't know, give me some names, but you'll have a name, and now because you have a figure for 07, then you just take the name and create an image based on that name and interact it with Oliver Sacks or whoever you use for 07. And then it's easier for your mind to remember. Take it to the next level, put it in a memory palace, or even create it within a memory palace, which is the magnetic memory method approach. And you'll remember that stuff for as long as you need to, for as long as you want to. It's really that simple. But you can deepen your understanding of these techniques. You can go on a great mental adventure and then go. There's always a solution for whatever it is you want to memorize. It's just a matter of understanding these techniques. So tutorials, Seb says, what's more important, attention or concentration? Well, that's a good question. I don't know if there's an answer. I mean, wouldn't attention come from concentration? I think that would probably be the way that I would think about it. Because if you... Well, I don't know. I mean, at some level, we're getting into semantics with these words, but generally, if you don't have a general level of concentration on the present moment, how could you pay attention, right? I wouldn't say, if you're not paying attention, how could you concentrate? I think it starts with concentration. Attention is the product of concentration and focus. So how that works, for example, is... I'm generally concentrated on wanting to remember people's names when I meet them in groups. So my attention to their names is coming from my concentration on, here's that paradox again, on the outcome of remembering their names. However, and I'll focus on this here for a second, the reason why one of my strongest skills is remembering all the names of people in rooms is because I'm willing to make the mistake if I do. I just let go of the outcome and I just enjoy using the technique. But my attention is coming from the basis of concentrating on an outcome that I'm willing to let go. If that makes sense? So I would say concentration, if we had to just use these terms, that's what I would say. Concentration, attention is just as important as concentration, but you don't get attention without concentration. Does that make sense? Hit that thumbs up if it makes sense, or say something in the chat to let me know you're on board with that. Or if you have an opposing, different view, different perspective, or a perspective that adds to our discussion on that. Labib 8 August says, I'm a student who is trying to be a database professional. I have a lot of concepts to grasp for interviews. Right. So, concepts are... anything that is in words, don't get caught up in, this is a concept. Concepts are something that are described and communicated in words, diagrams, and usually diagrams that can also be expressed in words, right? So it's words. We're always talking about words. And one of the issues that a lot of people face with memory techniques is they get caught up in the information being special or unique or different or somehow more difficult than other people's stuff. It isn't. It's just words. That's it. And if you focus and concentrate on the wrong thing, which is this is hard, this is challenging or whatever, that's the wrong thing to focus on. The right thing to focus on is Oh, Tina's here. So, Tina, did I get it right? Let me know in the chat. Because I wanted to, I asked you last time, please don't tell me your name so I could remember or practice my memory. So, X Bluebells is here. Thanks for being here from Indianapolis. Um, but yeah, so for Labib 8 August, this is really, really important. There's no information really that cannot be somehow memorized with memory techniques. You just got to focus and concentrate on how you're going to train your brain to remember it using the techniques. The depth of understanding that you have of the techniques will guide you. And so if you and really we're talking about 2 to 5 hours of learning really before you hit the ground running, and then you have a mental adventure for the rest of your life that just never ends. It gets better and better and better the more you use the techniques, and it's incredibly amazing and wonderful how how deep this goes, how far you can go, and how much joy and pleasure this makes for you. The more you go into the memory techniques, the more time that you spend with your own brain, your own mind, the rich mental material that you have to work with and to explore, and how fast you can get with coming up with it. You can get faster than the Flash, you know? And being faster than the Flash is an amazing thing to be. So, Tina X Bluebells says, "Good job." So I guess I got that right. Great, great, great. That's always fun. And we were just talking about names as you came in. Tutorials. Seb C says, "Could exist also mental thinking palaces and put them together to create a kind of citadel." Sure, sure. I mean, I haven't done it yet. There's something in the works. Well, I have done it, but I haven't done it on the podcast or on a video yet. But mega memory palaces are possible. You can call them whatever you like. At the end of the day, though, I don't know anyone who's very serious about memory palaces who has mega memory palaces. You have multiple memory palaces, and ultimately you either have very big ones that are heavily partitioned to reduce cognitive load, and no matter you can bolt them together in whatever way you want. You can bolt them together with mental glue, or you can have them be protected by mental moats. And everybody develops their own mnemonic style. I think I serve the mature learner who wants to have bulletproof memory techniques that last and serve for life. So there's a particular thing that I teach, which is to avoid the glue. And you would want to just think about your approach, because a citadel is a great metaphor, a wonderful one, an amazing one. But you would need to think about how you're going to stand up to that metaphor, how you're going to make that metaphor actually be real in your mind. Because a lot of people who try to stitch together or weave together multiple memory palaces without understanding the foundations and the fundamentals of what makes a memory palace magnetic in the first place, so that it's well formed and that it serves properly, it just falls apart, and it's not a citadel at all. It's not a mega memory palace at all. What it is a very weak and easily disrupted mass of cognitive overwhelm that doesn't get the job done. So, yeah, you can create a citadel, but just make sure that you're actually doing it from the basis of very, very well-formed memory palaces. Labib 8Og says, "Thanks for your tips, much appreciated." Thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for your interaction, for your questions. I hope you enjoyed today's show. We got a last few minutes here. If you want to post any questions that you got, go ahead and do that. Just let you know, coming up, Mind Map Mastery by Tony Buzan. We're going to be doing this in the very near future. I'm putting some of the final touches on my expose, my review of this book, and you may have been on a previous live and seen me using mind maps, and there's lots to be said, lots that I've revealed. I've also got an interview coming out with Antonio Libertino, who has his own mind map strategy and so forth. So if you're not subscribed to this channel, get subscribed if you want more information about that. And head over to magneticmemorymethod.com. There's a link for this material that we looked at today with Oliver Sacks here for you to go through to compound your knowledge. And again, if you want to grab one of these cups, send me a receipt or a picture, ideally a picture, like we had here with Barry, who grabbed his cup, and support the show. Super chats are sort of, whoa, wait, there we go, sort of welcome, but really all you're doing is giving YouTube some cash, and you don't get a special video from this particular thing. So Barry grabbed that video and sent me his picture with his cup, and he's been having some great success, and I really appreciate that. And we want to keep this grassroots, and so the super chats are of course appreciated, but realize that if you're going to do that, you're actually giving a good chunk of dough to YouTube. That doesn't really help support this show when really I want to support you. And so there's an incentive there. This video will help you understand a part of your home that you probably have never thought of before as a memory palace, and give you the tools to do it. So let me see you with your magnetic memory cup, and understand that cups are very, very powerful. And again, I really appreciate Julie for sending me this one. And if you want to send me a cup, a lot of people ask me, they say, what's your address? It's always at magneticmemorymethod.com down at the bottom. You can check with me just to make sure that it hasn't been updated, but I'll probably be updating that first before anything else. But this is really important stuff for your memory, and there's a lot of science to prove it. So grab one of these, use it to hold your pens and pencils, or to deliver your favorite beverage into your favorite mouth, which I assume is your mouth, although you could help someone else drink, and I will send you a video that you won't get anywhere else. So do that, and thank you, Barry, for sending your picture, and we hope to see many, many more in the future. So let's see. Blue Tina says, I was thinking when someone asks about learning a topic, if recommending they find a book at the same level they want to learn the information, and then use the table of contents as a first step. Well, do you mean using the table of contents as a memory palace, which is possible in a way? It's a kind of thing. I mean, you can memorize the table of contents. Really depends on the topic. It depends on the learner. One of the things we do at Magnetic Memory Method is we don't try to generalize what's going to work for all people, but rather we figure out where you're at, and then we give you some tools of developing the Magnetic Memory Method as a method for you, so that you're creating your own systems of memory palaces, and systems like the major and all the other things, so that you understand it where you're at, and you're building based on methods and principles rather than anyone else's system. So basically, if someone's asking you these things, which is very good that they're asking you these things for you to help them with, then be able to demonstrate not only why you do it and how you do it and that you do it, but explain to them that that may not be the thing for them, and they need to understand the principles underlying the methodology. Otherwise, you risk leading too many people astray and then frustrating them, and then they never get the full proper access to this beautiful tradition of memory techniques that they could otherwise, because nobody knows what is going to work for you unless you share the methods and the principles, and that you make sure that they understand exactly what is needed. It's kind of like music. Tutorials is asking about music here. And memory techniques are like music. Yeah, you can play. You can pick up an instrument and play. I got one right here. But if you don't understand music theory, your compositions, well, they might be very, very good ones, but you learn so much about the actual path to creating better compositions more quickly when you have the actual understanding of the theory that underlies everything. So we're not stuck in theory at all, but we do cover the basics of that, because we want you to be writing compositions in your mind based on the proper musical nomenclature, right? So that any other musician can just come up and play your stuff, except for in this case, it's not that any other musician can play your stuff, it's that you can play your stuff from your mind, because you know that you wrote it properly, you got it right the first time, and you did it on the basis of strength to strength. So strength of getting it right the first time, strength of practicing recall rehearsal, and then strength of performance, so that it's coming out and you're really going from the principle of heard it once, saw it once, memorized it forever. That actually is a possibility, but you need to really have the foundations set for yourself. A lot of people put the cart before the horse, and they can do like the 3-chord rock and roll of memory, but they're not getting to those goals that they really, really want. And it's because they're being taught tricks and, oh, just play C, G, and D, right? Instead of, well, this is a chord because it belongs to this sort of thing. And maybe that's a little too heavy for some people, but we are helping mature learners who want to go on mental adventures and who will really understand that this is a journey for life, and you gotta really appreciate the benefit of getting started based on the proper foundations, and not somebody just doing some whiz bang, la-di-da stuff, when you really want to have the real deal, So that was what I would suggest there. Tutorials, Sebc says, may I use classical music if I want to get to a state of mindfulness? You may. Just test it and see if it actually gets you there. Chances are it may get you to a particular state of mindfulness, for sure. I was listening to a piece of classical music this morning for something like that purpose. Some people call it the Kina, some people call it the Kena Upanishad. There's a piece of music that was written inspired by that, and I was listening to it just to test. Is the fact that this guy wrote this based on that particular Upanishad, is it actually going to give that music a particular effect, or will it not? And too soon to tell. I only listened to it once. Tutorials, Sebc says, does eidetic memory photo reading really exist? Let me show you on this page. The link is down below. If you care to learn more about photographic memory, you'll see that I have a link to that topic that you should check out here. So photographic memory is right here. Whoops. Sorry. I got Barry on. Photographic memory is right here. And what you can do is click on that link, and you can read everything that I have to say about photographic memory and whether it exists or not. There's eidetic memory, but there's also hyperthymesia, and you really want to think twice about what you're getting into, and does it really matter whether it exists or not? All that matters is that you have particular outcomes and goals, and you know the memory techniques that will get you there. So that's the most important thing of all, and I hope that helps, because you're going to have a great time using these memory techniques if you have a goal. If you have a learning goal, an outcome that you want to achieve, and then you just create the memory palace systems that are going to help you get there, or the system. It doesn't have to be systems, but obviously we want to help you as a mature learner for life get multiple outcomes, instead of just this is not a set it and forget it kind of technique. This is set it and fall in love with it and stay with it for the rest of your life, so that you're always learning for the rest of your life, and you're preserving your brain health, and you're becoming a better and better person over and over and over again and again, every day, improving by a certain percentage every day, because you're learning something new, you're learning it quickly, and you're keeping it forever without struggle, without strain, and so forth. So that's very important. And you do it like the Flash. You do it fast. Do it fast without struggle and strain. So thanks, everybody. That was a great time. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed making it for you. If you're watching the replay to this point, hit that thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below if you had any follow-up questions or comments. And especially curious what you all think about this sort of setup. Myself, my own self-criticism here is it's a bit busy, but we wanted to give it a try. This is the number one value of the magnetic memory method, is try things. So Tutorial said could also exist a mental thinking palace and create a kind of citadel. Of course, give it a try. Give it a try. See what happens. If it doesn't work, come back to the fundamentals. Same thing with this. Trying a new thing, seeing if it works. Nobody commented on it, so I guess there's no opinion. But love to hear from you if you do have an opinion, because we want to improve. This is for you. This is for you. I talked about karma yoga before. We're doing this. Not really particularly concerned about any particular outcome, but we do also want an outcome. We want this to work for you. We want this to serve, and we only know if you let us know. And there's many ways to do it. You can let us know with a simple thumbs up. You can let us know with some comments below. Tina says, thank you in the chat. That also helps us let us know. But the more specific you can be, then, the more we can build this ship for you to get you where you want to go. And that's what we need. So Tina says, need some nice poster background. Yeah, well, I was thinking about that. What background is real? What background really reflects what the magnetic memory method is all about? And it's hard. It's a mental challenge to figure out. But then I just thought, well, what's the most obvious thing, right? Well, Thales, one of my great muses of science and philosophy and also memory, he said that Megaston Topos Hapantagar Kori, space is ultimate because it contains all things. And so, space, uncluttered, that's sort of, well, that's not sort of, that's why I thought, well, we'll try this for a while and see how this does. And, backgrounds, yeah, we could do all kinds of backgrounds. Obviously, some background would be a shelf full of books. But, why not just show one book at a time? We'll see. But I thank you for that suggestion. Chagall, maybe we have a big guy with his head on fire because he has digital amnesia. That might be one. But let me think. I'd probably have the Triumph of Death or something because I always have loved that poster that painting. Sorry, Bruegel, don't want to call your art a poster. But I've loved that, and it does have Memory Palace implications. And if you ever read Underworld by Don DeLillo, that painting plays a big part in that story. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the right image is, but I went for space because of that great inspiration from Thales with space is ultimate because it contains all things. But I kind of think something like this would be cool too, like woo, lots of fire and slightly psychedelic stuff. But at the end of the day, what matters is that it's real, because all we care about is the truth. We care about the real. And yeah, Tina's suggesting different backgrounds. Yeah, well, we'd need a green screen for that. And I've thought about getting a green screen. We'll see. One of the things that always makes these changes and how we work to improve comes from the feedback that we get from you. So we have thought about a green screen for different backgrounds, and maybe some Memory Palace backgrounds would make sense. Or maybe more backgrounds of people like you supporting the show with some free video that I can give you when you grab some swag from the store. Just send a picture or whatever you got, and we'll get you the password to this special video. Love to see you all making the memory techniques real for yourself, getting it into the world. And what better way to commit to your goal than to remind yourself of your goal to improve your memory and to be focused and concentrated on your memory than to add to your collection a physical object that's in your space, in your face, to remind you day after day that you are working towards keeping your memory magnetic for life. So thanks again, everyone. I really enjoyed this time together, and I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope that you will get in touch. Come visit me at magneticmemorymethod.com. If you don't have the free course, the link for that is in the description. And you know what? I think I can grab these links and post them for you, since that I'm the boss of all these wonderful toys back here. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so in the chat, there's a free course. If you haven't taken my free course, please do. It's not hard. It's not complicated. It's super simple. And all you need to do is get started and focus and concentrate on the things that matter. And as I hoped to have demonstrated for you today, and given ample evidence of, I believe, is that everybody has focus and concentration. It's just a matter of what are you focusing and concentrating on. If you want to grab something from the store, there's the link to get some swag, and we'll follow up with you when we hear from you to get you your free video for people who support the show. So thanks again, everybody. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know either down in the discussion below or by email. And until we have a chance to speak again, keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye. Stop in the stream.